Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. As many of you know, I've been following some of the developments with COVID-19 vaccinations and different therapeutics and clinical trials with a great deal of interest. And I want to introduce you tonight to Brad Sorenson. He is the CEO, founder, president, and CEO of Providence Therapeutics. And he's frustrated. He's very frustrated because he's trying to persuade Ottawa to fund his company, Calgary-based Providence Therapeutics, because they've developed their own made-in-Canada mRNA vaccine that we've heard so much about. Mr. Sorenson, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Brian.
So tell me, what's the issue? How come you can't get funding?
That's, I think there's a lot of layers to that, but at the end of the day, I think the Canadian government's made their bets and they don't really want to change their storyline.
But you've been doing mRNA vaccines for a while now and for cancer and had some success, I understand.
Yeah.
Tell us about your history, if you could.
Yeah, so Providence Therapeutics has been around since 2015, and we were a small private company that was very focused specifically on cancer and specifically brain, ovarian, and breast cancer. And we were just, preparing to go into the clinic in 2020 with our personalized cancer vaccines in that area.
Vaccines.
Yeah. So, if any of your listeners, I'm sure they're aware of Pfizer, or not Pfizer, but BioNTech, which is the inventor of the Pfizer vaccine. Pfizer didn't make their vaccine, BioNTech did. And Moderna, both BioNTech and Moderna were working on personalized cancer vaccines. And back in 2016, those were actually two of the biggest transactions of the year, where they focused on personalized cancer vaccines. And so we were doing the same thing as them. We were effectively in stealth mode. We've got some very good data. We were looking forward to, like I said, starting our phase 1 clinical trial. And then we got sidetracked with the COVID pandemic. So, we want to get back to cancer. But we really can't get back to cancer until we get a handle on the pandemic. So like BioNTech, like Moderna, our technology we knew would be very applicable to this, and we pivoted and we made a vaccine. And in March of 2020, we were 1 month behind Moderna, and the vaccine that we just finished phase 1 and are taking into phase 2 is the exact same, vaccine that we designed back in March of 2020. The difference is we just didn't have any support in Canada to advance it.
And I find this astounding because there's been so much criticism that we haven't had a made in Canada vaccine. Did you approach the federal government in March of 2020?
Yeah.
Their response was, no way, go home?
The response was, we'll get back to you. For the first about 4 or 5 months, because they put out a call for proposals. We made a proposal, but it got stuck while they were waiting to organize their vaccine task force to evaluate the proposal, which took a very long time. And then by the time the task force got around to it, Moderna and Pfizer were already in clinical trials, and the task force recommended buying from Moderna and Pfizer because they were already advanced. And so the message I got back was, well, they've already placed their bets on messenger RNA. We don't need to do another messenger RNA because even then it was high risk, and so their shotgun approach of sort of buying from everybody, that basically meant that anything in Canada got regulated from the Strategic Innovation Fund down to the NRC, and the NRC had a limit of $5 million that they could fund.
So I spoke to a Quebec, well, actually, I think it's a Brampton-based company, but it's got a manufacturing plant in Quebec that is developing a vaccine that's plant-based, I understand. And they got quite a sizable commitment of funds from the federal government.
Medicago, I'm guessing you're referring to.
Yeah.
Yep.
How come they could get it and you couldn't?
Well, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there's a number of deals that went down early, that were, you know, I don't know how well vetted they were, but certainly if you had some existing connections and if you were, you know, located in the right place, things happen pretty quickly.
Now, where are you now? What's the status of your development?
Yeah, so we're doing great. Like I said, we're going into phase 2. We've got a very, very good vaccine. Our phase 1 data, you know, if you look at it and you compare to the published data of Pfizer, Moderna, we've got a more tolerable vaccine that's more immunologically active. And so, you know, we're very confident that we've got the best vaccine in the world. And we've got, you know, a deal with India that we announced just this past week, where we're going to be supplying 30 million doses to them with our partner Biological E. And they're not a small player. Biological E, I mean, they're making hundreds of millions of doses for J&J. They've produced, they've been around for 3 decades now. They've produced billions and billions of vaccines. So this is a legitimate player that's looked at our data, recognizes, you know, the quality of it, and we're doing a very, you know, significant manufacturing deal with them to add capacity. And we've got
produce it in India and sell it in India or around the world.
So the structure of the deal is it's focused on adding capacity. So we've got the 30 million doses up front from our North American capacity that, you know, we've placed with them, and they're reselling to the Indian government and within their territory. And then we've got, more importantly, a commitment to put in 600 million dose capacity in 2022, with a target of 1 billion dose capacity. Of that, Providence retains 50% of that we can sell, you know, and we get it at cost that we sell throughout the world. And Biologic E, they get 50% of that they get to sell into their territory, which is focused on low to middle income countries in Africa and Southern Asia.
Sounds like a great deal. And the manufacturing capacity is in India, or is it in North America, or what?
Yeah, we're tech transferring, so they'll be manufacturing in India.
Fantastic. And from an approval standpoint, is that going to be any quicker in India? You know, we've all seen the press reports of how bad the pandemic is right now in India, or is it the same process from you know, an approval standpoint as you'd have in Canada with Health Canada?
No, I think you're going to see a certain amount of urgency. You know, a lot of the regulators in the developed world, you know, showed a tremendous amount of urgency at the beginning. That's not the same situation now. You know, they feel that there's, you know, approved drugs out there, so they've taken their foot off the pedal, so to speak. But in other jurisdictions like South Africa and India, they're still, you know, in the full throes of this crisis, and they're treating it as such. So, you know, we've talked to our partner Biologic E. We're supplying them with doses to run a pivotal trial in India to get approval there. And in fact, you know, the high commissioner to Canada from India, you know, reached out to me after the deal, thanked us for doing this on a commercial basis, you know, that was tolerable. And you know, India's extraordinarily excited about what's happening right now. And so we're going to be running that trial. I expect starting in the coming months, and we should be able to have emergency use authorization in India before the end of the year. In Canada, I don't think we'll have that before Q1 of next year.
We're chatting tonight with Brad Sorenson. He's the founder, president, and CEO of Providence Therapeutics, a Calgary-based company that's actually developed and is in the trials for a Canadian, made in Canada, mRNA vaccine. But the federal government won't help them. Interesting. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with Brad in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Brad Sorenson. He is the founder, president, and CEO of a company by the name of Providence Therapeutics. He's been there since 2015. Before that, he co-founded another therapeutic company by the name of Arcturus. Is that correct? Arcturus?
Yeah, Arcturus Therapeutics.
Arcturus. I apologize. And it's interesting because he's developed this made in Canada mRNA vaccine. And the company was actually working on a vaccine for cancer. And I understand, Brad, that you've got some personal reasons why you were so interested in a cancer vaccine. Can you share that with us, please?
Yeah, certainly. So I co-founded Arcturus Therapeutics in 2013. And it was February of 2013 when we started up the company. Very early on, the company, made some very good strides with regards to some lipid nanoparticles that were used to deliver RNA. And this is at this very small community at this point in time. People heard that we had some pretty good tech, and in fact we were contacted out of the blue, a cold call by a researcher at MD Anderson, who was interested in collaborating with us for cancer. And you're a brand new company, and MD Anderson's world class for cancer research, and they call you up and they said, let's do a collaboration. Sure. So we said, send your stuff over. We formulated it for them, and they put it in their models. And this was for a late stage brain cancer called GBM, or glioblastoma multiforme. This is the same one that took Gord Downey from us. And I remember, I had really not a lot of experience in cancer at that point in time. I remember just doing a little research on GBM and thinking, man, this sucks. Things haven't changed for decades, and people just don't make it. And so I remember it was August, the last week of August in 2013, we reviewed the preliminary data that was generated by MD Anderson, and it looked compelling, as often early data does. And I thought, well, wouldn't this be great if we could do something for these people? Little did I know, it was not even a week later, my wife had taken all the kids for a routine eye exam before school started, end of August. And my son, Adam, who is just about to turn 13, the optometrist noticed swelling in his optic nerve and sent us to the children's hospital to have it looked at. Now, this was going into a long weekend, and they it was late on Friday, so they said, well, come back. He wasn't showing any other urgent symptoms or anything, so come back and we'll do it on Tuesday. So Monday was his birthday. We celebrated his birthday. Tuesday, we went in for the MRI, and he had a massive brain tumor. And he just couldn't believe it. The day before for his birthday, we went and we hiked a mountain. If you see the logo for Providence, it's a mountain. And I used that because I never wanted to forget that day. And so our world changed. Fortunately, Adam is still with us. He's a walking, talking miracle. His prognosis was less than a year. That's coming up 8 years ago. And he's had probably a couple dozen clean MRIs now, and he's functioning normally as a 20-year-old would. And he's going to university next year and living the good life. But I became obviously passionately interested in cancer, and the likelihood of him having a recurrence is high. And so I started Providence Therapeutics, and I had experience with RNA medicines, and I saw the promise in messenger RNA. And so I raised money and I recruited some fantastic scientists and talent, and we started a program. And that's really how it came about. We have a really good cancer program. I'm extremely frustrated that it's on pause right now because I want to get it started again.
I can understand it. It's a very compelling story. Adam, he's okay.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's doing fantastic. He's that's a much better story than mine. I mean, he didn't do standard of care. I actually worked with a fantastic researcher that was at the Alberta Children's Hospital by the name of John Rowe. He's since moved on down to Southern California. He's in San Diego, running a big setup down there. But we actually used a metabolic approach for his cancer, and devised a custom protocol for him. And I know that it's being used in California. One of these days, I'd like to be able to see if I could do something to sponsor that and make that more readily available here in Canada.
We won't go into too much detail, but what's a metabolic procedure?
So, I mean, everybody's heard of it now. 8 years ago, nobody had heard of the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet was developed actually as a dietary therapy for children with epilepsy. And it's one of the few diets or treatments that is able to manage and improve brain healing. And there's a lot of really good research on that. So there was some incidental evidence that it was effective in brain tumors. Again, this was 8 years ago. There's some early stage research and articles in PubMed. And so, basically we developed a protocol that involved a very, very therapeutic version of the ketogenic diet. My son's ketone levels, as measured in millimoles in his blood, were 1 millimole higher than his glucose levels for an entire year. And if you're somebody that's really into this, that will drop your jaw. That only happens through extreme calorie restricted 4-to-1 therapeutic ketogenic diet. That coupled with hyperbaric oxygen and radiation, it worked for him. And I know it's worked for a few others. It's
fantastic.
Yep.
And he didn't have to have something cut out.
No, he did have 2 resections. He had two brain surgeries. He did not ever have chemotherapy, but he did have radiation, and we're very fortunate. We discovered his tumor, like I said, almost by accident, before there was a lot of degradation in function. And so, if you met him today, you wouldn't know that he had any a major brain tumor. And I mean, it was the size of his fist. And had deviated his center line the whole bit. But, at the time he was diagnosed, he was a competitive swimmer. He was climbing mountains with me. He had high function. The only other symptom he had was, we thought there were migraines, but he had some pretty serious headaches. Other than that, we're extremely fortunate.
You are, and that's fantastic news. My cousin, who actually happens to live in Calgary, had a tumor the size of a baseball cut out of her head about 20 years ago, and is doing fantastically today. So,
good.
Those are good. 2 good stories. Well, let's go back to mRNA, and my best to Adam, and hopefully he continues to climb mountains, as I'm sure he will. Could you explain to us what is messenger RNA?
Well, I like it when definitions make sense. When you label something with something that helps you understand it. Messenger RNA simply is a ribonucleic acid, so that's the RNA that delivers a message for the body to do something. In this case, you can tell the body to make a protein, and so your body will, the ribosome will process the necessary materials in the cellular mechanism, and it will make a protein. So it's a message. Think of it as sending an email to the body, and what that message tells the body to do. And like I said, and what we tell it to do is to make the spike protein in the case of COVID, and the body makes the spike protein, and it processes this and makes it, and the body, your immune system now recognizes, hey, this isn't supposed to be here. and it has a response and neutralizes that spike protein, and is now trained for anything else that shows up that happens to have that same spike protein, in this case, the COVID virus. And so, and you can do that with cancer. So in the case of cancer, as a tumor grows, there's certain mutations, and those mutations produce antigens, and these are called neoantigens, or new novel antigens that aren't supposed to be there. And you can make a message that tells or trains the immune system to look for these novel neoantigens. And we've gotten really significant responses where we're able to elicit very robust CD8 T cell responses against these neoantigens. So you basically trained the immune system to find and hunt the tissue that's expressing these, and the only tissue in your body that expresses these is the tumor or cancer. So you're
training your body to have an immune response against a cancer that's not inside of you, the same way that it has an immune response against COVID-19 virus.
Yeah, it's really all what messenger RNA does is it produces and like I said, it produces a protein or an antigen or whatever you need it to produce. In the case of the spike protein, we produce a protein, and you can produce something that, like I said, in the case of the tumor or in the case of COVID, that's not natural to the body. It's not native. Okay, it's amazing. We all have the same letters in our DNA as anything else in life. An elephant has the same coded letters that makes up its DNA as we do. You can have, if you give the right message, you can have it produce a protein that's associated with an elephant. Now your body wouldn't do anything with it. It would just be like, what the heck? But the coronavirus is not, it's an organism, right? And it's made up of the same letters of DNA that we're all made up of. And all we've done is we've told the body to make that, and it's not going to harm us because it's not native to our body. It's not going to do anything. But what it will do is it will elicit a response from the immune system. And when the immune system responds to it, and it's very transient, messenger RNA, it only lasts for hours in your body. And the protein that's produced lasts, the actual process of producing the protein, we're talking maybe 24 hours, 48 tops, and then it's gone. It's the message is read, it's consumed, and it's gone. And it's not like you're making spike protein, 7 days later, but your body has now been exposed to it, and it's still mounting at that immune response. So that when, like I said, you get exposed later on, it's ready to go.
This is interesting. And explain to me, if you could, how this is different than typical vaccines. So I understand the AstraZeneca vaccine, for an example, is a inactive copy of the actual virus. Is that the case?
Right. So the AstraZeneca vaccine is they refer to it as like a retrovirus. So they actually use it's not an inactive copy of COVID. It's an inactive copy of a previous common cold, like another coronavirus, and they use that to sort of stimulate the activity and to elicit that response. And they do a few modifications in it so that it more closely resembles the coronavirus. But it's they use what they call a viral vector to have it get into the cells and get processed in the cells to produce the desired effect. The difference really with messenger RNA and other, whether it's a recombinant protein or other technologies, in the other technologies, you're generally making it outside, like, Medicago, for instance, it's being made in a plant, and then they're purifying it, and then they're putting it into a human patient, right? They're effectively using plants to grow a spike protein, then they extract it, they purify it, and then they expose the patient to it. But whenever you do something outside of the body, you can do a great job, but nothing's going to replicate the majesty of the human body. Like, our body is the most amazing thing, and how it can make things and respond. And so when you give it a message and you tell the body to produce it, it's the person that's the manufacturing, it's the cells in your body that are manufacturing that.
This is a sort of a brand new mRNA is like a brand new way of making vaccines. Is that not correct?
It is. And like I said, in fact, it's not just new for vaccines. It's mRNA was discovered like a decade ago. It's very, very new in our understanding of science. And so when BioNTech received approval for its vaccine, that not only for a vaccine, but any mRNA type of therapeutic or drug, that was the first time it ever happened. And so, like I said, this is just at the beginning, the really cutting edge of a whole new way of medicine.
If you're all using mRNA, mRNA, how are you outside of patents that others have established?
Right. So in the case of messenger RNA, there's a number of ways to make it, and those are relatively patent free. Making messenger RNA is not hard. What's difficult is making it in large scales and making it and then purifying it. Because when you make messenger RNA, you get what you want is a single strand. And most of your listeners might be familiar with like a double strand, where you've got the helix, the double-stranded RNA. You don't want the double strand, you only want a single strand. And so when you make this, the ribosome reads it across and makes it. Every once in a while, it reads it in the other direction and makes the other copy. And that is not helpful. That whenever a virus is a double-stranded RNA, it's not supposed to be in your body. If you have double-stranded messenger RNA, it's a virus. And so your body has a very strong immune response to that. And so that's not ideal. So with regards to the patent, there's not a lot of gatekeeping patents when it comes to messenger RNA. Actually, most of them relate to the delivery, the lipid nanoparticles that are used to deliver messenger RNA. But most of it is actually trade secret. It's do you know how to make it, and do you know how to purify it and do it at scale? And we do.
Unbelievable. What a great story. It's a shame that you haven't got more support from the federal government. We're going to take a break and come back more with Brad Sorenson, the founder, president, and CEO of Providence Therapeutics, and their messenger RNA product that's entering phase 2 clinical trials in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. It's really been interesting for me this past year through COVID-19, interviewing numerous different companies, people, scientists on their different developments in regards to COVID-19 vaccines and PPE and therapeutics, et cetera. We're joined tonight by Brad Sorenson, who is the founder, president, and CEO of Providence Therapeutics, a Calgary-based company that's developed a messenger RNA vaccine for COVID-19. Brad, and all the different people that I've interviewed, and we've mentioned some of them, Medicago as one already, but then in addition, a therapeutic company out of Vancouver that has gotten a product that has been approved by Health Canada, bought by the federal government, used in over 40,000 patients in the United States, but not used by provinces in Canada, and others in PPE, et cetera, such that, I have come to the conclusion that one of the biggest failures that we've had since SARS and some of the analyses that and reviews that came out after SARS were that we had to have domestic production of PPE, domestic production of ventilators, and domestic production of vaccines. And we haven't. And you know, we talked about Medicago. They got a big contract from the federal government. I've talked to some PPE manufacturers that have got big contracts from the federal government. There's something wrong with our system. And the fact that you haven't got any, you know, research and development funding or manufacturing commitments is endemic of that, is an example of that. What's wrong?
Well, it's a tricky question, Brian. I'll just be honest with you. There's obviously there's some things I can share with you and some things I can't share with you. What I can share is that you know, Canada has a love-hate relationship with large pharma, and you know, if you look at the money that's been spent and the commitments that have been made, very little of it has gone into you know, innovation from small pharma or biotech. And the truth of the matter is large pharma has largely failed in the response to COVID. I mean, J&J's vaccine is still on the shelf. AstraZeneca vaccine had some challenges, and J&J is going to have the same challenges as AstraZeneca because it's basically the same vaccine. You know, Sanofi and others, you know, started, and these are the major vaccine makers, and then failed and bailed. And now they're starting to, you know, try and come back again. But it was biotech. I mean, Moderna, you know, and keep in mind, Moderna had never had an approved product before they got their vaccine approved. They had never had revenues, and now they're, you know, this, you know, close to $100 billion company, and you know, saving the world. BioNTech, you know, again, same thing. Both Moderna and BioNTech, they IPO'd, you know, in the last 3 or 4 years, and these were biotech companies that were cutting edge and innovative. And then, you know, large pharma, in the case of Pfizer, comes in and buys up BioNTech, or at least the rights to the vaccine, and then markets it like crazy. But large pharma really hasn't served us well. I mean, J&J got $1 billion from Operation Warp Speed, and when they finally had their vaccine approved, they had 5 million doses available. You know, Pfizer, they've done a great job in enabling BioNTech to manufacture and get the vaccine out. But, you know, the reality is again, Pfizer hasn't done, they focused on the rich developed world. You know, we approached Pfizer and said, you know, we want to run this trial, and we need access to some Pfizer doses, and we were told no. You know, they're not focused on responding to a pandemic. They're focused on their bottom line, which is, you know, that's the nature of the business. I get it. But when you take that and you couple that with government, it makes it tricky. You know, we've got a Canadian government that is, you know, their lifeline is these large pharma companies, and we're asking them to support us. And, you know, we don't know anything about the deals they're signing. We don't know anything about what restrictions are placed on, you know, on that. But it's.
You think they've signed something that restricts their ability to fund you?
I think that whether it's formal, I doubt it's formalized, but I would be stunned if it's not informal. You know, we've been asking the federal government for 2 months. So we asked Pfizer for doses for our phase 2 trial, and, you know, Pfizer said no. Ask the Canadian government. We've been asking the Canadian government for 2 months, and we won't get an answer. They won't say yes. They won't say no.
Why do you need the Pfizer doses for your phase 2 trial? You're comparing to placebo, or you're comparing to Pfizer?
No, well, we can't run a placebo-controlled trial. It would be unethical. I mean, there's
Weren't the other vaccines done on placebo-controlled trials?
Right, but they were done earlier in the pandemic when there was no other available options. Now, it would be unethical for us to run a placebo-controlled trial in Canada when there's available options. So what you do is you move on from a placebo-controlled trial to what they refer to as a comparator or non-inferiority trial. And that's common. That's how flu vaccines are approved, is through non-inferiority trials. And what we've got is the world, and it's not just us. There's other companies out there that are trying to get access and run non-inferiority trials. And if you ask yourself, why isn't there more late stage, if this is such a demand, if there's so much going on, why aren't there more trials running? Was because the only place you can run a placebo-controlled trial right now, or what they refer to as an event-driven trial, is in the developing world. And that comes with its own challenges and issues. And we are actually looking at doing that with the WHO, with the Solidarity trial. But we could be running a trial. We could be advancing trials in Canada, and we could be expanding capacity to help address this worldwide pandemic in Canada. But, we can't get answers from the Canadian government.
Can you find people that haven't been vaccinated to put into your comparative trial?
Yeah. I mean, it gets more challenging as more and more people get vaccinated, but yeah, you can. You need to, and that's what we're working towards. Like, I expect that we will be able to run our phase 2 trial here in Canada. But to run our phase 3 trial, we'll do that in India, just because, to get, for our phase 2 trial, we need 600 volunteers. For our phase 3 trial, we need over 3,000. And of course, that will be run later on when even more people have been vaccinated.
You said in India, you were going straight into the pivotal trial. So are you skipping the phase 2?
Yeah, so our strategy is to run the phase 2 comparator trial in Canada, and then to augment that with a phase 3 safety trial in India, which allows us to combine this, because you actually don't need, for a comparator trial, you don't need a lot of participants. You can get by with 150, 200 participants, but you still need 3,000 or 4,000 to prove out safety. So we can do the comparator trial in Canada, and we can augment that with the safety portion of the trial in India, with the 3,000 or 4,000 participants for the safety portion of it.
Is your mRNA 1 dose or 2 dose?
It's 2 doses, same as the others.
And does it have to be super chilled?
No, we're -20 for long-term storage and transportation, and we're up to a month, and we're actually expanding that. We think we'll get up to about 2 or 3 months, but right now we're 1 month in refrigeration.
And how does that compare to Pfizer or Moderna?
It's superior to Pfizer, and it's comparable to Moderna. Moderna just announced that they can do 1 month of refrigeration. They were 2 weeks, so they've caught up to us. Moderna has.
And what do you think about these mix and match trials and conversations they've been having, that you get the AstraZeneca first, then you should get an mRNA second, and it improves your chances of being immune to the variants?
It was inevitable, and it's the right thing to do. There was a company in the States called Gritstone that was doing cancer trials. And they started with a viral vector as a prime and then boosted with mRNA. And so it's, there's evidence out there that you can do that and it's effective. And we've already started seeing, where people have been doing that in countries around the world. So we are confident that that's where it's going to go. And that's, again, so, all of the hundreds of millions of people that have received an AstraZeneca vaccine, they can't get boosted with AstraZeneca again. The viral vector would be recognized by the immune system, and it would be ineffective. So they either have to redesign the viral vector, the whole vaccine over again, or they have to use an mRNA vaccine to boost these individuals with if they're trying to boost them against variants. So everybody in the UK and in other places around the world that's already received an AstraZeneca vaccine, they're going to need an mRNA vaccine, and Pfizer and Moderna can't meet that demand. It's important. It's important for the world that Providence gets its vaccine approved, because we're adding to worldwide capacity, and the world needs more capacity.
I got an AstraZeneca first vaccine. I'm out in Calgary in a couple of weeks. Can I get yours as my second dose?
I wish. We probably won't be approved by the time you're going to get your second dose.
I'll volunteer for the trial.
Unfortunately, we have to have naive volunteers. So, but we'll be there for you. We'll be there for you in 2022.
Are you public now or still private?
No, we're still private. And
can I invest?
We actually just closed a convertible debenture, and I don't think we're going to be doing anything in the near future. We're like I said, we signed the deal with Biologic E, and we've got a couple other things that are in the hopper that we should be announcing in the coming weeks and months. So I think we're in pretty good shape that way. What I would say is, we're going to our focus. Eventually the Canadian government is whether they support us or they don't support us, we're going to be helping the world. And, eventually they're going to have to acknowledge the fact that this vaccine, originated in Canada and it's being made in Canada, and they're going to have to address that. And so, time's on my side, science is on my side. Really what what I'm focused on is I'm going to share with you. I've never shared. So this is your breaking news here. Okay, Brian. We were supposed to do a clinical trial in 2020 for cancer. And I had spent the previous 2 years working with Alberta Cancer Foundation, Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, the Terry Fox Foundation, and Ontario Institute of Cancer Research. Those are the 4 largest not-for-profits in Canada that are focused on cancer. And my goal was, what I saw as a problem, and this is something I was dealing with in 2018 and 2019, okay? Our vaccine for cancer, if successful, would be worth somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000 for a course of treatment in the US. That's just the way it is. That's what the market would be for what we were producing. Canada can't afford that. And I live in Canada. My son was treated in Canada, and it frustrated me to think that I could develop something that would be helpful to cancer patients and that it would not be available for where I lived and where I developed it.
Because it's expensive.
And that happens. It happens all the time in Canada. We're great at fundamental science.
Alzheimer's drug that just got approved. It's like $52,000 a year.
Yeah, and it happens all the time in Canada. We get this great foundational research, and then anything that's successful just gets gobbled up by the U.S. market.
Okay. I can understand that it costs a lot, and that there may be some drug price resistance to that. But saving someone from going through cancer treatment has got to be like, number one, just the expense, the pure hospital expense, the chemotherapy, the radiation, the surgery expense has got to be multiples of what you're talking about.
But Brian, the reality is it doesn't need to be that expensive. It doesn't. And I know it sounds crazy. I'm a CEO of a pharmaceutical company, and I'm telling you this. Okay? It doesn't. Especially when you're dealing with a platform technology like with messenger RNA. And so, when you're doing a small molecule and it took you 7 or 9 years to take something through clinic, and you had to do, innumerable safety trials and test it, for effects with other potential treatments and everything else, sure. But with mRNA and a platform technology, it's not the same paradigm. That's why pharmaceutical companies love it and they want to go to it, but they're still trying to pretend it took them, years and years and, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars
to get the pricing up,
to get there, to get the pricing up. Do you know how much Providence made the world's best COVID vaccine? And do you know how much it's cost us? $20 million.
And every unit Cost you how much?
It'll cost us about $5 to make a dose of vaccine.
I want to buy some stock, buddy. You got to go public.
And no, but you know why I'm not going public? Because if I go public, I'm going to get bought by J&J or Pfizer or whatever, and there's nothing I can do about it. And you know what I was trying to do?
You want to make vaccines available more cheaply, more readily to solve more health problems worldwide.
Yeah. And you know what I was going to do with cancer is I had agreed with these 4 organizations, these not-for-profits, to sponsor our phase 1 clinical trial. And in exchange, I was assigning all of the intellectual property for Canada back to them to create a legacy asset for Canadians so they could have it at cost.
Well, isn't that the legacy of the gentleman that invented insulin? That he invented it and then gave it away for free?
Well, and see, here's the thing. Canada's unique. Keep people saying, oh, we got to do this for Canada, we got to do this. You know what? Our tax structure isn't set up for us to be a biomanufacturing powerhouse. It's just not going to happen. We can pretend it's going to happen, and the federal government can throw, $400 million at Sanofi, but that plant's going to be obsolete in 5 years because they're using a flip phone to make influenza vaccines when I'm going to be doing it next year with a smartphone. But more importantly, Canada, what we've got that's looked on as a burden is our healthcare system, right? And it's a burden, and it shouldn't be. It's an asset. We've got an incredibly diverse population, and we've got a phenomenal healthcare system with phenomenal clinicians and researchers. We should be an epicenter for clinical trials. But when you run a clinical trial in Canada and you're using the low-cost healthcare system, the Canadian government or not-for-profit should be able to retain the Canadian rights. And that's a throwaway. Nobody's ever asked the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, when are you getting into Canada? Because we're not the low-hanging fruit. Nobody cares about getting into Canada. It's a tough market. You've got a regulated system, and you've got all these different provinces that you have to deal with for the distribution of healthcare. And so our company was going to benefit because we were going to get a sponsored trial, and then we keep the rest of the world. Okay, so the US will make $250,000 or $500,000 for a course of treatment. So my shareholders are happy. But in Canada, where we ran the trial, they can have it at cost. And I can't do that after the fact. I have to do it in advance because otherwise I'll be sued successfully for differential pricing. But if I do it during the phase 1, if I do it early enough, I can pull it off. And that's the irony. I've been trying to do right by Canada for years.
And they haven't been trying to do right by you.
I've been trying to do this for years.
Brad,
and when COVID happened, we're being shut out by Canada.
Brad, what can my listeners that get motivated by this incredibly passionate and poignant speech from you do? What can we do?
Write your MP, write your MLA. I mean, at some point in time, the only thing politicians respond to is, are they going to get reelected? You'd like to think it would be more than that, okay? But at the end of the day, the number one thing they care about is, are they going to get reelected? And if enough people in Canada understand what's being neglected and they make a stink about it, then suddenly they'll catch the vision. And I'm waiting for the day when Justin Trudeau goes out and he makes his press release and says, I've got Providence's back, like he's always got everybody's back.
Brad Sorenson.
I'm going to laugh when that happens, but eventually it'll happen.
Brad Sorenson, founder, president, and CEO of Providence Therapeutics, that's developed a made in Canada messenger RNA vaccine that's the best in the world for COVID-19 and is going to develop one for cancer as well. Thank you for joining us and being passionate. We really appreciate it. And thank you for challenging us and our federal government to do better by all of us. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you for having me.